What do you do with yourself when you live in a city and you don't know anyone? Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all good. So we've got a bit of a story time video today. So I thought I'd come and share with you guys my experience of moving to a new city all on my own when I literally barely knew anyone. So I used to live in a town called Telford, which is in Shropshire. It's a very quiet town. There's not a lot to do there, not much happening, not much nightlife. So I kind of feel like I outgrew the place very quickly. I got very bored. So when I went to uni, for the first 2 years, I stayed at home because I really wanted to save as much money as I could because I really wanted to buy a house. So I was like, let me just stay at home, and then when I get my student loan I can just save more of it and then buy a house. It didn't actually happen like that at all. I have spoken about it in another video. I'll leave a little card at the top here, don't know where it is. So yeah, I ended up staying at home for the first 2 years of uni. So I went to Birmingham City University, and for my final year I had to do a placement year, and I was like, I only want to do my placement in Birmingham. I don't want to go anywhere else. Birmingham is like where I feel comfortable. So I managed to get a placement in Birmingham City Centre, and I was working in a recruitment agency as a social media assistant. So because I was still a student, I could still get a place in student accommodation. Now obviously, because I didn't move out for uni for the first 2 years, I didn't make that many friends who lived on campus. I made friends who were in my class, but they all commuted as well. So I only had one friend who lived on campus. It wasn't even on campus, it was one of those like private student accommodations. I don't even really know how the whole thing works. So yeah, I had one friend who was staying in accommodation, and we were really close friends in the first and second year of uni. So I thought, oh my god, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to move into my student accommodation, my friend's going to be there, it's going to be all amazing. So my placement year started in June. Now obviously, because it was student accommodation, they didn't officially open until September, but you could pay extra and get early access. So that's obviously what I had to do, because the commute from Telford to Birmingham was literally like 45 minutes a day, and it was so long. And because for my final year of uni I was also studying at the same time, so it was just too much going back and forth. So yeah, I was like, I need to get in there like ASAP, and I managed to move in at the end of July. So there wasn't that many students on site. It was only the international students that were still there. So I wanted to move into the same flat as my friend, but I couldn't because there was already 5 people there. I was like, I don't want to move in with anyone else. I don't want them going on nights out when I'm trying to go to work in the morning. I was like, nah. So I decided to move into a studio flat in the student accommodation. So I had my own bedroom, living room, kitchen all in one. Whereas in the other rooms they had their bedroom and then they had to share the kitchen and living room. So I was like, yeah, I just want my own studio flat. I don't want to have to talk to nobody, whatever. So yeah, I moved in at the end of July and it was all exciting. Moved all my stuff in. Mum and dad helped me move. Everything was good. It was only 10 minutes away from where I worked. It was all smashing. The only problem was there was a lot of rats around, but that's just a different drama. And then one Sunday I drove back to Telford to go and see my mum and dad. Had a nice chilled Sunday, had a bit of dinner, then drove back to Birmingham to go back to my accommodation. And to drive into the accommodation you had to use a little fob to get in and out. So I got out of my car, put my fob on the gate didn't open. I was like, great, it's raining, I can't be bothered with this. So I had to drive back around the block, go to the reception area and say to them, my key fob's not working. This is when it gets sticky. So the security guard who was on reception like looks me up and down. He's like, have you got any ID? I'm like, what? So have you got any ID? He's got any ID? And I'm like, what do you mean, like my driving license or what? And he's like, nah, you student accommodation ID, like proper going in. And I'm like, nah, we've never been given one, which we hadn't. We actually had never been given a student accommodation ID. So I'm like, what the hell is this guy on about? Then he starts having a go at me, saying that I'm a liar and that I don't live there, I'm just trying to get in, proper going in on me. And back then I was shy. I was just like, oh my God, why is he shouting at me? He's calling me a liar. I'm stood in the rain and like he's proper going in on me. Then luckily the student accommodation manager came down and was just like, what the hell is going on? Why is she stood here crying? And then basically I had to explain that he stood there and called me a liar, and he was just having a go at me, saying that I didn't live there and things like that. So she opened the gate for me, let me go in. She was just like, I'm really sorry, are you okay, blah blah blah. Then obviously, because he was being so rude, I had to put in a complaint and be like, what the hell has just happened? Why haven't you let me into my accommodation? And they were just kind of like, oh, we think it was a misunderstanding, you know, he just has to be really cautious, blah blah blah. I'm just like, whatever, okay. And then it settled down, it said sorry, and then about a week after, I've used the fob to try and get into my accommodation. I've pressed it on the thing, it didn't work. I'm like, great, here we go again. I've walked to the reception and guess who's sitting there? The same flipping guy that didn't let me in the first time. So I'm like, great, here we go, here we go. But I'm still thinking to myself, oh, do you know what, it should be fine, because he had a go at me last week, So now he knows who I am and he knows that I live here. And 2, I've just put in a complaint as well, so there's going to be no funny business. So I've gone to the reception and I've said, my fob's not working, could you please let me in? So then he's got up from behind the desk and he's like, oh, what block are you in? And I'm like, oh, only block E. And he was like, oh, I hope you're on the ground floor, I can't be bothered to go up. And I was like, haha, like having a laugh and joke with me. He lets me into the corridor of my flat, which in the corridor there's only 2 studio apartments, obviously because they're quite big, so they can't put that many. So he's let me into the corridor, got to my door, and then he's like, where's your student accommodation ID? And I'm like, here we go again. And he was like, you don't live here. And I was like, I'm not even having this drama again, because I'm like, why have you waited until we're in a corridor? Bearing in mind the corridors are like this big. You've waited until we're in a corridor. I'm on my own as a small little 5'3" girl. You're about 6'3". Why are you intimidating me like this? And I just thought, I'm not having it today. So I just walked back out to the reception. I'm banging on the manager's door and I'm like, he won't let me into my accommodation again. And this time it was a different manager, so they didn't know about the drama that we just had last week. But literally, I don't know what his problem was. And then the manager came, let me in, we were all fine. So then obviously I've had to complain again. So then they took my complaint a little bit more seriously and they called me into a meeting and they were like, what's happened? We don't understand why this has happened. They just basically put in a rule to say that if I ever have to deal with a member of staff, it can't be him. And I was like, really? Okay, let's hope this doesn't happen to anyone else. But because I knew he still works there, I always felt very, very anxious, because I'm thinking, I'm living here, you're security, you can literally just get a copy of any key you want and come into my apartment. When we were in the corridor, I genuinely was expecting him to like turn around and hit me because I'd complained. So I'm thinking, oh my god, this security guard could literally come into my apartment. So then that made me quite anxious for a while. Or even anytime I'd walk into my accommodation and walk past the reception, I'm thinking to myself, is he gonna be there or not? Like, I just got really shook. And I think that was definitely the start of me feeling anxious about living alone. Before that, I didn't even see any worry with it, and I actually felt safe at the fact that we had security. But then after that happened, I was like, I didn't tell anyone at work as well, because it took me quite a while to find my feet and sort of feel comfortable with even like talking to these people. So yeah, literally it was just my mum and dad who knew, but that situation defo made me very shook. But despite the crazy incident with the crazy security guard, I still loved living in Birmingham. And I think because Salford was such a small town, I just love the freedom of like being able to go to the ball ring, being able to go here, there and everywhere. I just think the sense of freedom you get when you live on your own is just unreal. Like, you can have someone around and no one's gonna be like, who's this? You know what I mean? You can literally just do what you want, cook what you want, just chill, man. I just love living on my own. So yeah, even though at times I felt panicked and I was like, oh my god, I'm a bit scared, I still loved being able to live on my own. Then things at my student accommodation started to settle down. So the one friend that I had in the accommodation, we sort of drifted apart, I think because I was working and she was still at uni, so we just kind of like drifted. But then my friends from back home would start coming over to Birmingham and we'd go on nights out and stuff. And then once I started to get used to being in Birmingham and felt more comfortable, I just stopped going back to Telford. So yeah, I ended up getting really close with my cousin and I ended up making friends at work, which I would say it probably took me about 5 months to actually make friends at work who I actually wanted to go out with. So I'd say from October onwards, I was living the good life, because I had my workmates who I was going out with on a Friday, then I'd have my friends from back home who I was going out with on a Saturday, and then I'd see my cousin like in the week and we'd go for cocktails. So that is when I started living and I just became a proper city girl. I was like always out for cocktails, out for meals, like that was like a proper good time in my life. That's when I discovered like the Alchemist, Fumo, like all these nice places. And then it got to about May time and I started to not like my job, and my internship was going to be over on the 1st of June, and I was like, great, okay, I don't like my job, what am I going to do? And originally they spoke about keeping me on because they really liked me, they said I worked really hard. So yeah, they were sort of saying I was promised a grad job and I was thinking, oh, I don't really want it, what do I do? So then my original manager actually left, and the director turned around and said to me that he can't guarantee me a new job with a new manager, just in case the new manager doesn't want me. So literally the day he said that, I started typing up my CV, handed it out, and then within a week I had a job offer. So I managed to get a job in a place called Hell's Owen in an Audi dealership as a marketing assistant, and I was like, okay, brilliant. So I'd say Hell's Owen is about half an hour from the city centre in the morning with like the traffic and everything like that. So I couldn't really afford to live in the city centre, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to move. So I think I had about 6 weeks left on my student accommodation, and I was like, okay, I need to find a new place to live. I need to find like a whole new area of Birmingham to live. So because I was such a city girl, I didn't really know any of the other areas, and I was really scared that I'd end up like in somewhere that was really rough, because I think in Birmingham it's really easy to just end up in the ghetto. So I was just like, I can't have that. So I just listened to people's recommendations, and they were like, why don't you move to a place called Harborne? So Harborne is about 10 minutes away from Halesowen and 10 minutes away from the city centre if there's no traffic, but there is literally traffic every day, so it's probably about 20 minutes from the city centre. So I saw this little flat and it was slightly out of my budget, but because I was getting quite desperate, I was like, I need it. I can't even put into words how small the flat was. But when we went around with the estate agent, he was saying that a couple lived there with a baby. So I'm kind of thinking to myself, well, if a couple can live there with a baby, then I can live there on my own. But that place was small. There was like mold on the blinds and mold up the wall and everything. It was just ugh. But anyway, I started to drift from my old workmates. Kind of one of those where you're like, oh, we'll be friends, like we'll still meet up. And then when you do meet up, it's either a little bit awkward or it's just not the same, or you end up just not seeing them that much. So it got kind of lonely. And as well, I didn't really warm to my new co-workers that well, but that is just a different story. Like, so I was just like, okay, brilliant, I've got no friends. And like one of my friends from back home as well had moved to Spain, and I was just like I think it hit me then how important my work friends were at my old place in helping me feel comfortable in living in a city on my own. Because when I moved to Halesowen for work, they never went on nights out, there was no places to get lunch, it just wasn't a very social place. Whereas the first place I was working and did my internship, it was very social and everyone sort of spoke to everyone, whereas this place was completely different. So yeah, I didn't enjoy living in Harborne at all, and I didn't really have my co-workers as friends, so I did start to feel very, very lonely, and I hated the job. Like, I just hated the job itself, which just made it even worse. And I was just like, so I walked out the job. So I think the day I'd walked out my job, 2 days later, we were getting the keys for our first service department. Now, setting up a service department is a lot of work. It is like equivalent of moving into an unfurnished house. So we're just working and working for about a week. Like, all the families come around to help out. Like, we're just trying to set up beds and everything. So that kept me like super, super busy. And I was like, oh yeah, this is not working. Like, he's great, I love it. And then the day after we'd finished setting up the apartment, I sort of woke up and was like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself. It just sort of dawned on me that all my friends work 9-to-5 jobs. I'm in a city where I don't really know that many people, and I'm just like, what do you do with yourself when you live in a city and you don't know anyone? Like, this is when it hit me the most, because it's kind of just like, well, what do you actually do? Like, where do you go? And I was just kind of like, I don't know what to do with myself now. I'm not working 40 hours. So then this is when I really started to struggle, and I was just like, I don't even know what to do with myself. And part of that problem was probably because I just walked out my job and there was no plans of like, what do I actually want to do with my time? And to be honest, I'm not really one for networking events, so it's very rare you'd really see me there. It's just like not my thing. So I was like, okay, I need to form some sort of routine, because I think with serviced accommodation there's no sort of like routine, so you can't say to yourself, okay, this is what you do for 40 hours a week. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was always little errands that needed running. So I was like, okay, desperately I need to form some sort of little routine. And then I joined the gym, which is literally my favorite place ever. And then we wanted to scale the business further, and we ended up taking a block of 6 service departments, and then I ended up moving into one, and luckily they are in the city centre. So city girl Leah was back. So literally my life just got drastically better once I moved to city centre. I don't know what it was. Like, when I was in Harborne, I was too far away from like all the things that I liked, like all the restaurants, and I didn't even want to go to any of the restaurants in Harborne. So as soon as I moved to the city centre, I literally just felt like I was back. And because where I live is quite close to my old workplace, I could like meet up with those guys and things like that for lunch, or like after work for drinks. So it was just like the best thing ever. Like, I think when you're young and single, I feel like you have to live in a city centre. Like, you just have to. Like, I can't even imagine now living in Harborne, because I just feel like I'd be so bored. City centre living is the way. And then I just sort of slowly got into my own routine. So I started doing things like YouTube to fill my time, and just making sure I was actually going out at least once a day. Otherwise, sometimes I think when you live alone, you could literally go ages without talking to anyone. So I think it's definitely so important to fill your days with things where you actually have to talk to people. I feel like I'm lucky and also unlucky sometimes that I live where our service departments are, because I know that if our housekeeper's there, I can just go and chat to her. And I go to the gym every day, and then I go pole dancing, so I've made friends with those girls there. So yeah, I think slowly but surely you will get there, and you'll be like, okay, this is my home, like this is my place. Like, it's definitely made me a lot more independent. Like, I feel like when I need to do things on my own, it's not a big deal, because I'm just like, I live on my own, like it's fine. So like, I feel like things scare me less, because it's like, it's not a big deal. It's just like, oh, whatever, like I don't mind doing things on my own. And I feel like it's definitely made me enjoy my own company more, because I feel like I can just sit on my own and be fine. But to be fair, I don't know if that has made me a little bit more antisocial, because I enjoy my own company so much. And then when I have to like speak to people, if I have to speak to people for too long, honestly, I start to feel exhausted. I'm like, I can't deal. little. So yeah, that's my little story time of me living on my own. I just thought I'd come and give you guys a bit of an insight into my life, you know. But if there's any other videos you want to see, then definitely comment down below and let me know. But thank you so much for watching, really appreciate it as always, and I'll see you next time. Bye.